Hi everyone, welcome to the virtual in-service on school-based occupational therapy. My name is Carly Carter and I'm a second-year occupational therapy student at the University of Tennessee Health Science Center. So today we have some learning objectives we're going to go over. So we're going to identify the role of occupational therapy in the school system and how it differs from the medical model. We're also going to identify the purpose of an IEP or individualized education plan, and who the IEP team may consist of. The third thing we're going to identify is the difference between the contextual-based model, which is currently the service delivery model, and the push-in versus pull-out methods of service delivery. So now we're going to talk about the role of an occupational therapist, a general practitioner. The role of an occupational therapist is to look at the client holistically, to help identify potential barriers to occupational performance and provide adaptations and modifications in order to support those needs. Also to promote independence in daily tasks and what the client needs or wants to do. So now we'll get a little more specific and talk about the occupational therapist's role in the school setting. So as we know, a child's main occupation is to play and learn. How can occupational therapists support that? So we support students in participating in school activities. We help the student by supporting their academic achievement and promoting positive behaviors to promote learning. And we do all of this in the least restrictive environment, which we'll talk about later for the contextual model. Another crucial role to occupational therapy is collaboration. Collaboration with students, the student, the teacher, the parents, any other support staff around the school. So before we move on, we're going to do a little Padlet, which is the word wall that we're used to doing. The link is provided, and just fill out what an OT could assist with in the school, what you think an occupational therapist could help with, some issues that could be addressed, just brainstorm. So we're going to take a second and do that, and we'll pick right back up. So although collaboration in person would be ideal, we're going to talk about OT's role in the school and what they really focus on. So we spoke earlier about play, learning, academic success, social participation, and ADLs. Some skills that an OT may work with the client on are fine motor skills, visual motor skills, handwriting, sensory processing, feeding skills, and providing modifications and adaptations to foster more independence and promote learning. Some examples of this could be an extra weight on a pencil, or an additional grippy on a pencil for handwriting, or going to the cafeteria and working on how we can help carry a tray. That will promote social participation because the student will have someone helping them, as well as giving them that independence that they so need. Another thing would be modified seating. If a student has some visual motor skills, setting them up front could possibly work, providing those recommendations to the teacher, potentially adding a ball for sensory processing to sit on, giving that student that sensory diet, and really promoting the teacher, providing the teacher with the skills that he or she may need in order to make sure that student is academically successful. So some outpatient versus school-based occupational therapy. When I spoke with some occupational therapists who are currently working in the school, they said this was a very common denominator of really common issue that they face daily. So the outpatient or the medical model might look at the underlying causes. So strengthening, for instance, and the OT would address strengthening activities, but all in sync with those fine motor deficits or visual motor deficits or handwriting deficits. But in the schools, the focus is strictly supporting the teacher in reaching the child's IEP goals. So 100% of the focus of a school-based therapist is working on that academic success. So some common issues explained by an occupational therapist in the schools is that some parents will assume that their child should be getting the strengthening and the stretching at school versus the OT really focusing in on that academic success. So we're going to do some retrieval practice for our second learning objective. So what we're going to do is we're going to write down everything that we know about an IEP or an individualized education plan. So I'm going to give you a second to write some stuff down. You can type it on your computer, or you can take notes on a piece of paper. Just really dump all the information that you have already about an IEP, and we'll talk about it here in just a second. So now that we're discussing IEPs and you just had a second to dump all that information that you already knew, I'm just going to provide you with a little refresher on IEP meetings. So an IEP meeting is essentially to collaborate on the new goals, the current status of the student, and the needs. Usually, at least I want to make a disclaimer that in every school system, in every state, there's differences, variations. However, in Shelby County schools, you review the IEP once a year. It could be more if there's a change in status, or a parent wants to talk about goals or update goals, or you get the point. So when other circumstances are needed, that they can happen more than just once a year. So who sits in on an IEP? So it'll be the IEP team. This can vary from student to student. However, all the therapists involved, so if their child is receiving speech would be there, physical therapy would be there, if they're receiving PT, if they receive nursing services for medication or feeding or whatever, the nurse would be there. If they need a behavioral therapist, they would be there. The special education teacher, the general education teacher, the parent. And around middle school is when the student usually attends an IEP meeting, if that is appropriate for them to attend. So that would be the IEP team, and they would just go around and update on the students' goals, on the status, collaboration. Something that I also found interesting from a Shelby County occupational therapist, so keep in mind that this could vary elsewhere, but in Shelby County schools, the occupational therapists do not write their own goals. So that would be the teacher writing the goals based on what they need help with in the classroom. However, that is not to say that the occupational therapist does not collaborate with the teacher, because they do, to come up with those goals. Like I said, every district is different, but it takes a lot of collaboration between teacher and occupational therapists and other service providers. Oftentimes, the goals that the teacher and the OT collaborate on together relate to handwriting, fine motor skills, independence in tooling, eating routine, if that's like if the student needs their food cut up additionally, or a plate that is a suction cup to the table. It could be sensory strategies to promote attention and focus, and that would enhance academic success as well. So piggybacking off of all that collaboration, the current model that the service delivery model in the schools is contextual based. So contextual based is different than the other two methods we're going to discuss here in a minute. So contextual based, it would be the occupational therapist going into the classroom or the gym or the cafeteria, whatever the student needs, whatever goals or needs that the therapist is addressing, they would find the time that the student is doing those, and they would go in to the classroom or the gym, like I said. So for example, if the student is working on handwriting, the OT would have to collaborate with the teacher on when they do handwriting, and the OT would come in, not bringing their own activities, potentially could bring adaptive equipment, but not their own activities. So not like a puzzle or something that they came up with on their own. It would be whatever the teacher's working on, the OT would sit with the student and work on that as well. However, like I said, it doesn't have to be the classroom. It could be the gym. If there's steps leading up to the gym, the OT would figure out what time they go to gym and work with them if they're working on some visual motor or safety, addressing safety, so holding the handrail when going up the stairs. They would find out, collaborate with the teacher, what time the student goes to gym, and they would try their best to be there and work on that skill. So it's in their natural context, doing their natural activity. This takes a lot of collaboration and can get tricky with planning, but this model is usually teacher-led. So like I said, the occupational therapist is not bringing in their own activities that they came up with. The only thing that the occupational therapist would probably bring would be adaptive equipment to support that academic success. So the models that were used previously in the past were the push-in model. In the push-in model, the OT might bring their own supplies to the classroom and pull the student aside and work on this. So as you can imagine, this could be a little tricky with 30 other students, 20 other students looking at the student you're working with and wondering, what are they doing? Why is that person pulling them to the side? And this would also take away from that instruction, and that's what we're trying to prevent with the contextual-based model, is enhancing what they're already getting or assisting, per se, what they're already getting versus doing something else with them and they're missing the instruction provided by the teacher. Another service delivery that was used in the past was the pull-out method, and this would be the OT come in and getting the student and taking them maybe to a therapy room, or maybe in the hallway, or taking them to work on the cafeteria on steps, even though they're maybe not using those steps on a daily basis. And so this would take away from instructional time and also take them away from their natural environment. If you're walking up practicing something else and you're away from your classmates, you're also not being able to participate socially with them. So the contextual model is really seems to be ideal. And also, if the teachers are making the goals for the students, you want to work with the teacher and what they're doing, so that way the student can meet their goals, if that's possible, or if we need to modify those goals or update the goals. That way everyone's kind of on the same page, and the students in their environment doing what they need to do, being with their peers. So I really hope that you got a little bit of an insight on what it means to be a school-based occupational therapist. If you will take some time and fill out a Google form on the service delivery models we just spoke on. And I would be happy to answer any questions that you have. There's a spot on there for like a brief description. So if you want to add some questions in or email me, whatever you need to do, I'll be happy to answer any questions. But I really hope you guys got a glance and a refresher what you needed if you're considering school-based occupational therapy. So I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your day, and I really appreciate your attention and participation. So thank you.